Yeah, I think it's interesting because, um, this movie that we watched with our niece, what is it called?
Demon Hunters or K-pop Demon
K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix. This is not sponsored, although I'd love a sponsorship. Um, oh my god, I feel this exhaustion as I'm pulling these cards because it's like this sense of energy of like someone who's just so exhausted from trying to get rid of their ugliness, trying to get rid of what they think is like their worst self. And like just skin picking at it and thinking that like the more you skin pick, that you're gonna somehow heal and get rid of it and will forever be good.
like with therapy.
Yeah. And the irony is that like that's not like what happens when you skin pick. You start getting scarring. And that area becomes worse. You know? Um the more you pick at yourself and force yourself to shed skin like the snake prematurely when it's not in your cycle yet. Like you're actually, it's like you telling the universe you don't love yourself and you don't accept what you've done, who you are. And what would happen if you were to be able to accept and own the actions, the thoughts, your reality? I think people are like, oh, but what if I don't like my reality? You know, what if I don't like it? Oh, my reality is like, poverty. The reality is right now scarcity. My reality right now is like, you know, um, I hate my job. My reality right now is that like I don't like the people I'm living with, or my reality right now is, there's so much violence happening and I don't like it. And like I don't want to live in this world. Like I want to jump to the phase in my life where I none of those challenges are here, where those aspects of my life aren't there. But what that also means is that you're not accepting who you are in that moment. It's like you can't you can't love that person who is currently experiencing scarcity, who is currently going through difficult relationships, who is currently maybe struggling with their job or struggling to find a job. You can't accept and have grace and compassion for that person that is maybe making mistakes in relationships. And it's like yourself, that person is who I'm talking about, the self, and you're hoping to get to the point where it's like you want to be that version of yourself who is healed. So going back to that reference of that movie, spoiler alert, this person is also part demon, and they have these marks, and they think that they can eventually get rid of them, so they'll never have a part demon ever again. Um, I have to break it to people. Everyone has light and shadow, light and darkness. There's duality in who we are as people in the world that we live in. This isn't to mean like this isn't meant to justify abuse. This isn't meant to justify uh, the heinous shit that's happening. Rather, it's to honor the fact that we all have the capacity to enact harm and violence that many of us like to think we don't because we want to have like a Disney Channel life or a Hallmark movie life, right? As much as people will like think these are corny or it's like hilarious, we'll make fun of those things. There is a sense, the irony is that there's still like a version of many people who still wishes they had that they have that kind of life. Um, Even when they're actually problematic and stuff, but basically who doesn't have to struggle with their own darkness, who doesn't have to struggle with areas that they're flawed in, with areas that they're still learning to own. And so the snake woman reminds us, what if you stopped picking at that person? What if you were able to stop picking at yourself and own, this is where I'm at in my journey? And rather than skim picking my way through, trying to get to the better layer, the better version of me. It's like people who are exfoliating like to unnecessary degrees. It's not magically making their skin better, although they may think it is because they've spent a lot of money on products to do everything.
Skin cancer is going to go up.
There's other ways that we can actually be harming ourselves in this process of trying to exfoliate ourselves, body, mind, spirit, and soul, to get to jump, like when I hear the timeline jumping into like our next better version. And the irony is that, like, in order to get to the next better version, you need the version of you now. This version of you that is feeling that pressure, that is feeling inadequate, is what I heard, that is feeling frustrated with themselves. That's the version of you that gets to a point that will be like, I've had enough. I know I am enough. I know I deserve better. And so what can I do? What are things that I can do right now to treat myself better, that aren't picking at myself and like, just being like, criticizing myself in all the ways I'm failing? Because I don't know about you, but never in the moments of my life where I criticize the hell out of myself did I magically then become a better person. Did I magically like improve? There's a difference between like being able to look at areas of your life that you're not doing well in, or aspects of the self that maybe you're angry. You're an angry person. Maybe you find that you're constantly angry. Maybe you find that you're constantly like ready to get into it, like in an argument. Or maybe you find that you're constantly avoiding conflict. Or maybe you find that you constantly find yourself trapped in your fucking head, right? And you can have those moments, and you can either spend time then criticizing yourself for that, or you can start thinking, how do I get myself out of this? Start thinking, okay, so I'm stuck in my head. I find myself stuck in my head a lot. So maybe instead of thinking more, let me do something and break out of that prison, right? Or if I'm constantly angry, maybe one day you have that moment, you're like, why am I so angry? And be like, what's missing? Where is this anger coming from? And why? And is the person I'm directing the anger towards the person I really mean to direct my anger towards? Or why am I so angry at myself, you might find? Maybe you're angry at yourself because there are things you can do that you're not doing to try to improve yourself. And improve yourself not from a place of skin picking your way through improvement, but rather from loving on yourself, nurturing yourself, pouring onto yourself a lot of light, a lot of love, a lot of compassion. Because never have I really truly grown through being pulled apart and picked at and picked at and picked at. The best growth I've ever had has been when I've been nurtured into my growth. And what's funny is, like, if you're a parent, if you're like a boss, if you're leading teams or teachers or whatever the hell, like if you're in a position where you are working with people, you have the possibility to nurture and be nurtured, or you have the possibility of destruction. That's what it means to be, to refer back to the movie, to have the demon. We all have that. Everyone, like, we're human. We are not perfect. We are not all good. We are duality. And that's not a binary. And so this snake woman reminds us, can you embrace the duality? And if you're in a point right now where You don't love who you're seeing reflected back at you. Can you sit with those parts of yourself that you're struggling to love and give them grace and compassion? Because those are the those are the people, those are the beings. You are the person that is going to get you to that timeline jump, to that next best self. But you might not get there if you shit on yourself all the time. You might not get there. It might be a very bumpy journey if you're constantly picking at yourself and forcing yourself through rebirths that are unnecessary, like premature rebirths. Things can take the time they need to take. There isn't one size fits all in terms of time, of how long cycles should be or what cycles should look like. So it's just what's right for you. Think back on the moments that you've had some amazing rebirths, and what were the parts, the other parts, to get you to the rebirth. How were you nurtured? How did you nurture yourself? How did you care for yourself? How did you support yourself and support your environment to get to that rebirth? Right? What's within, and then what's also outside of us in terms of our environment, what's within our control. And then the heart of the maguey, el corazón del maguey. Birth is it's nurturing, you know. Can you nurture yourself? And I'll show the other card I had before. And then like another card reflecting nurturing, reflecting babies, reflecting what it means to be a newborn. You know, what if you just came off of a rebirth? What if you were just reborn? What if this is the first time you're learning how to be this person? You know, because that's what happens when you're reborn. How would you treat your baby you? You wouldn't be shitting on that baby for not doing things the way you want them to and fast. You know, babies literally, their willingness to thrive, if not supported, decreases. And the same goes for all of us. And so what if you just went through a rebirth journey and you're already expecting yourself to jump to the next because you were reborn and like you're somewhat better than maybe your past self, but you're still not where you want to be. You're still not who you want to be. But you know, what if who you are right now is amazing? What if you saw yourself right now and nurtured yourself? What if that version of you is this beautiful baby and is sacred? And what if your role is to create a safe nest for this version of you, to create a warm place, to create a place where their needs are met? You can do that. Can you thrive? Can you build a space for this version of you to thrive, to get into that next version of what you think, right? And also to give, really, because what happens when you start living in the present, when you start nurturing the current self and accepting, maybe you're having a hard time loving that version of you, especially the version of you that might not be so great according to your perspective of like what good and bad means. But what happens when you start loving that version of yourself is that you start also reviving, and there starts to be more growth. There starts to be growth, not just for yourself, but for others around you. And the environment's light, because your light increases. It literally allows for more growth around you. And then we get the solar calendar, which is interesting. I think like I think so many of us forget that the concept of time is something that many of our ancestors did not follow in the way that it's being taught and we've internalized. Many of us have forgotten that there were other communities that had other ways that they marked cycles, times, seasons, and it wasn't through 24 hours around the clock. We forget that that's also part of colonization, that is part of the colonized mindset, and that at times we are living under a clicking time, like a clicking clock that doesn't exist. This is a reminder that there were other people who measured their cycles, their life cycles differently. Even the concept of age wouldn't be what I might not be 32. Like that might not be the way that we would refer to my maturity as a human living breathing person. There might be other ways in other time periods in which my maturity was measured differently. Yet we have all internalized this measure of time, of change, to be time. And what if we could allow ourselves to slowly start pulling at that colonized mindset, to give ourselves some room to breathe, especially with our expectations of like where we're supposed to be in life, what milestones we're supposed to be completing, how, when, where we're supposed to be doing things, like putting this pressure behind ourselves to like grow, to get that coin, to like become parents, to have a partner, to have kids, like all these things. There was a time where all of this things naturally emerged, and there was a time where like these milestones didn't even exist. There was a time before college. There was a time before people used to go to school. There was a time before people enacted marriages the way that they are done today. There was a time before people had home ownership because the lands were no one's. No one could own land. People were stewards and caretakers of land, but they were not owners of land. That's also part of colonization. So there's many things tied to milestones that are actually just colonization and white supremacy. And so like what would happen if we weren't following milestones and time stamps that other people have set for us, that also consequently put this pressure on human beings, and to feel like they're never enough, they're never doing enough, they never have enough, and that they're always behind, or that they're doing too much and not enough at the same time. People are existing on those intervals. And I didn't share this card before, but we got the Spirit of the Earth. I'm not saying the indigenous names because I don't want to butcher them, to be honest. This reminds us to ground with the earth. That the more we ground with the earth, we also connect to spirit. We also connect to those in the spirit world. We also connect to entities and to our power. We connect high above, our intuition. We connect to our crown, which connects us up above to the divine. We are portals. We are portals. We are doors into new worlds, and to other forms of living, and to medicine, and to creativity. We are the portals. And at times we completely become so stuck, so scared, so unalive. Even while we're breathing, we're not living, that we forget that we are portals. We're so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And if we can ground, we can also connect above. We don't want to live in the clouds only. We do want to ground. We want to be rooted somewhere. And Mother Earth just gives to you. Anywhere you are, you can ground. It doesn't matter where you are. you can ask Mother Earth for permission to ground. And Mother Earth will always tell you yes. Because what? Land cannot be owned. And stolen land cannot be owned or claimed by people. Anywhere you are, you can always ground. You do not need to own land to do so. You don't. It's great if you stand on grass. It's great if you lay down, you know. And also, like, you can ground anywhere. You can be standing up. You can be sitting in a chair. You can always ground. Mother Earth will always connect. Will always open its portal, its energy center for you to ground. In any way, in any time, any moment that you desire. Doesn't have to be a perfect time. There doesn't have to be this huge meditation. Literally, it can be as simple as, Mother Earth, do I have permission to ground with you? Reconnect my energetic cord to you. And the answer will always be yes. Grounded. And see what happens. Keep doing it, because you might develop abilities you didn't know you had. To close this out, this is why we're doing the tarot course, because I'm using an oracle deck because that's what was at hand and also what I was called to use. But we're teaching a tarot course because for us, all these items are tools. But there were moments that our ancestors, elders didn't have, 1,000 decks to pick from. And they still connected intuitively. They still used the resources at their disposal to connect with spirit. And some people didn't need anything other than themselves, sitting with themselves. And I use these more for visual aids for people, because I'm downloading. That's like getting to the point of connecting. And I love a tool. I also love a stim to help me ground. But it's not necessary to connect with spirit, and it's not necessary to connect to your intuitive medicine, your intuition. So thank you. With that, I'm going to end this reading.